So thank you, Regina. I hope you're having a nice time wherever you are this Sunday morning. And I want to take a minute to thank my Bible study folk for surprising me, because I am surprised, and coming across the bridge, which I'm afraid of. And so I thank them for that. I thank my girlfriend for driving me here this morning. Amen. There is a word from the Lord. I have been in a season of waiting. And I have been in this season of waiting since about 2008. So I thought when the year of completion came, that 7-year thing, that new things would start to happen. New things did happen. However, I've still been on that season of waiting. So as I have prepared this sermon today, it occurred to me through this season of waiting that that's what God has been doing. He has been developing a book that I've been working on called Waiting with Expectations. So when I was doing that this week, last week, when Regina asked me to preach for her, God gave me a new chapter of the book. And this morning, I'm going to deal with that chapter for you. Now, this sermon isn't pretty. It isn't for those people who want to pretend like they got it all together. It's not that kind of sermon. This sermon is for people who have been in the waiting room. I don't mean folk who are irritated because they're in line at Walmart and it is taking a long time. This sermon is not for you because you're not really waiting for anything. You're just inconvenienced. This sermon is not for people who are waiting for their check to come in the mail and they said it would be delayed 30 days. It's not that kind of waiting. I'm talking about the kind of waiting when you go into a waiting room and you sit in a chair, in an uncomfortable chair, because there's nothing good, there's nothing cool about being in the waiting room. I'm talking about a waiting room where the lights are dim and the situation is dark. I'm talking about a waiting room where people have thrown at you all kinds of scriptures, like that beautiful scripture that comes from Isaiah 40, those that wait on the Lord. See, all of those scriptures pick up after the waiting. None of those scriptures pick up in the wait. In the wait is the waiting room, and that is the place that's problematic. That is the place that we think we might faint or die in. That's why Isaiah says, don't faint, because if you don't, you will. But Isaiah, what are we supposed to do while we wait? I can even tell you everything you should do while you wait that makes you look pretty as a Christian. But waiting ain't pretty. Because the things that we have to wait on usually tear us apart. It causes us to wonder. It causes us to question. It causes a crisis of faith. Is God in Hawaii? Somebody tell me what's going on. It might even cause us to fix our own situation, ask Sarah how that turned out, and Saul how that turned out. So I'm talking about being in the waiting room. So I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to sing just a second to encourage myself. So God, I need you here today, and I invite you, God, to hide me behind the cross. Let the word I preach be your words. Use me, Lord, my hands, my feet, my mouth, my tongue. And God, I need a word from the Lord. So preach to me and through me, God, and I will be ever so careful to give you all the glory and all the honor. Amen. 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 When I'm in this season of waiting, I thought about this song that comes to mind for me, While I Wait. And while we wait as Christian folk, this might apply to you as well. So I'm just going to sing a little bit of it. And it goes, if I were in control of my life, I think that I would have worked things out so much differently. Yes. For you see, there would be no hurt, no pain, no disappointment. Of these things my life would be scot-free. But that just goes to show how little I know about leading, about controlling my life. For you see, it's all of these things that works together just to make the best of me.
All right, ma'am. Amen.
So I gave my sister here 2 scriptures to look at: Isaiah, which meets us after the wait, and Psalms 41 through 3, which talks a little about being in the waiting room, coming out of the waiting room, and while you're just in the waiting room. So I'm going to read to you. Relax. Don't read with me, because you might be reading from a different version. I just want you to hear. So Psalms 41 through 3, New King James Version, reads this way. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry. He also brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock. He has put a new song in my mouth, praise to our God. Many will see it and fear and will trust the Lord. The remix, the Message version, reads this way. I waited and waited and waited and waited some more for God. And at last, he looked. Finally, he listened. He lifted me out of the ditch, pulled me from the deep mud. He stood up on a solid rock. He stood me up on a solid rock to make sure I wouldn't slip. He taught me how to sing the latest God song, a praise song to our God. More and more people are seeing this. They enter the mystery, abandoning themselves to God. Now, oftentimes the King James Version and the New King James Version sounds better. But in this situation, I get the message. You'll see that part that says, I waited and waited and waited and waited some more. So let's break this down. We meet Psalms 140 in a predicament. What is the predicament, I ask? Well, he said, he also brought me up out of a horrible pit and out of the miry clay. A horrible pit in the miry clay. The foundation was shaky. Nothing was stable. Whatever this person, you, me, is going through, it is terrible. If somebody's saying, what's going on with you? What are you going through? You can't even describe it to them. All you can say is deep. It's bad. Whatever situation you find yourself in the waiting room, I told you it's not petty and it's not lighthearted. It's not about being inconvenienced. It's not standing in front of the microwave when you hit popcorn and 2 minutes later you got a bag pop. It's not that type of waiting. The waiting room finds you in a situation that is horrible. It's a situation when you've been diagnosed with a disease and you have gone on your knees, you have anointed your own body, you have sat before the church and they've had a healing service and you are waiting for God to do what God promises. It's those situations when we're praying and we use the scripture, by his stripes we are healed, and yet we're waiting for a healing. We were diagnosed with stage 1 and here we are with stage 4. God, where are you? It is the situation when you're waiting and you've done all you can do and you financed this and you sold that and you fried fish here and you borrowed money here and your house is going on the auction block. You've got just a little bit of time before you can save it. Where is God? You said you give me the desires of my heart. My heart desires my house. I've worked for it. I prayed for it. I've been good for it. At least I thought I'd been a God. Where are you? My child has lost their everlasting mind. Where are you with the promise that you said? If you raise up a child in the way that I've done all of that, look at this fool out here. He just may not make it home. God, where are you? I have done what I said, what you told me to do, but God still. It is for the husband.
Preach, girl.
Who prayed for the wife. God has given him his good thing.
All right.
And she turns out to be anything but a good thing.
All right.
She is everybody's good thing.
Preach.
But yet, God, they sent me to the text where the brother had to deal with the wife who was all over the place. Is that what you want me to do, God? I'm embarrassed, God. But if you want me to sit here with her, God, help me and give me the strength to sit here.
Yes.
Oh, but God, here she is home, pregnant with another man's child. God, help me sit here. Where are you? Show up. Oh, it's for that wife who once again puts on her fashion fair. Oh, wait, update. Fenty makeup from Rihanna to cover that black eye. She once again has anointed his clothes, her clothes, the doorknobs, the house before you come in, the house when you get in. Chicken can be fried up in this camp, but last night he broke her arm. Oh, but she goes to the church, and the church preaches to her Proverbs 31. And the pastor says to her, well, have you been a good and holy wife? Have you been, what kind of wife have you been? It's her fault. Instead of telling her what the word says, which is, don't be in the house with an angry man. But we don't learn that, women. I bet you haven't heard that. But anyway, I digress. That's for another day. It's the miry clay. It is so bad. It is so bad. It is when you have waited for a job. I'm talking about myself now. It's when you have waited for a job.
All right.
You have more degrees. You got them all. What else do you need? And you can't find a job, and you've got bills to pay. You got a house you're trying to keep over here. I'm not here by myself. I know people have been here with me. And you wonder where God is. God, I'm serving your people. I'm doing what you asked me to do. But God, where are you? Are you in Hawaii? Because I don't go there. The waiting room of life is when you sit there and it appears that you're all alone. And you watch other people get up and get their blessing. You watch the one who's less qualified for you for a job get a job. You watch the sister who shouldn't even own a dog, and you're asking for a baby, and she gets the husband and the baby. Oh, it's the waiting room when you wait, when you watch everybody get what they have asked for, but you. And you cry out, even me, Lord, even me. While thou art blessing, can you just have some drops fall on me? You're not even waiting, asking for a cup of water. I'm just saying, can you sprinkle some drops on me? That is the waiting room. And that is the predicament that this person finds themselves in. That's the predicament that we find ourselves in when we are in the waiting room. But let's look right here. Verse 40 says, I waited patiently for the Lord, King James Version. The Message says, I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited some more. It doesn't even take, they take out patiently. And I think they took out patiently in the Message version for this. Patiently just sounds too Christian-like. You know that God talk? How are you today? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored in the Lord. What does that mean? I didn't ask you that. I know you're blessed and highly favored in the Lord. You woke up. Hey, right? I asked you, how are you today? So patiently sounds like God talked to me. What sounds more real when you're in the waiting room is I've been waiting, and then I've been waiting, and then I've been waiting, and then I've been waiting some more. But stuff happens while you wait. While you wait, first you pray. Okay, God, you know what it is that I need? Your prayer is pretty. You get on your knees, and then nothing happens. You know, because we got a timer on this wait from that. So I don't know about you, but when I pray, I'm going to give God at least a week. But when you're in the waiting room, it ain't that kind of wait. The waiting room, requires time and requires patience, because God doesn't do anything. And then while you're waiting, you're trying to be a good Christian, and you turn on all your gospel music, and you get, he's on time. And you be like, I don't even want to hear that. You turn it to something else. Because I don't know what God they're talking about, because that's not the God I know right now. I'm trying to keep it real. If you know, y'all might be holier than me. But I'm telling you that when I'm in the waiting room, I don't want to hear it. Because I didn't wait long enough. He ain't on time. He ain't showing up on time. I don't know whose time. Because my house is going into foreclosure. Wait a minute now. In the waiting room, y'all, I want you to know that that child you were waiting to come home may never come home. You may stand at his grave instead. In that waiting room, that husband or wife, that marriage you're trying to restore may not be restored. It might end in divorce. That cancer that you've been praying about, that disease that threatens to take you out of here, just might do that in the waiting room. Yes. So then we have to deal with the questions, the crisis of faith, like the theology, the theological question. Where is God in suffering? Why do people die? Why do good people die? Well, there are no good people. There are none good but God. But nonetheless, we still answer the question, because in the Christian perspective, some of us are better than others. So why is this mess happening in the waiting room? When is God going to show up? Or he didn't show up, so what's up? What's going on? So when the crisis of faith happens, and the questions happen, and the wondering has happening, I want y'all to know what's going on. People are watching us. See, first they hear about your problem, and they know about your problem. Ain't nobody trying to help you, because they don't know what to do anyway. But it's funny how in the house of faith, people will tell you quick, fast, in a hurry, they're praying for you. I don't need you to pray for me. I need some manifestation, some physical help. We're broke. We don't have any food at home. Don't pray for me. Bring a dish. Yes. That's what I'm saying. But again, I'm talking about me. So you're in the waiting room, and folk are watching you. They're watching you deal with your wonderment. They're watching you challenge God in your questions. They're watching to see if, while all of this is going on, there's still a crisis of faith. Oh, how much of a Christian are they? Because you know, if you faint or falter or shake it off, you ain't a real Christian. And you know God is coming for you, and they gonna do what you want him to do, because you ain't a real Christian. Job's boys did good when they shut their mouth. And when they opened their mouth, they were a hot mess. Job sat in his situation, having done nothing wrong. And his boys sat with him until they said, well, what did you do wrong to deserve this? Because you know that's what's coming. What you did wrong. But nonetheless, when those challenges come and your faith is shaky, folk are watching you. But God does a couple of things in this very short 1 through 3. The first thing he does is he turns to me. He said, God inclined his ears after the crying. So these things are happening simultaneously. It's not this cute, pray, Lord, you know what I need, God. Oh, Lord. Oh, Jesus, you're a magnificent God. It's the kind of praying where it sounds more like, God, where are you, Lord? It's when your friends say, how are you doing? You say, girl, I can't even pray anymore. All I can do is say Jesus. It's the kind of praying where tears just flow. No words can come because you've used them all. You prayed pretty. You prayed half pretty. You prayed ugly. You done screamed and cried. How long, Lord? You done done all of that. And then God inclines his ears. After all of that. Because let me tell you what's happening right here in this predicament in the waiting room. While you're going through your questions and your wonderment and your crisis of faith, I want you to know that God is still listening. God still sees. Even if your prayer has just become silent tears, God is still listening. And you're still praying because the Holy Spirit fixes every groan, right? And he pitied every groan. So then, God inclines, which simply means God leans in closer. When someone inclines, it means that they are drawn in to what they see or what they hear. So God has watched you in the waiting room.
Yes.
And you know, theologically, I have the question, you see me, heard, why you watching? Show up. But it's just me. I'm the one that needs more of the Lord, not y'all. So God finally inclines to hear my cry, what I'm asking for. So when someone inclines again, they lean in. They might sit down. They say, what's going on? And that happens. And God hears. Before, God's been listening. But this time, God hears.
All right.
In the waiting room, God finally hears me. Now let me fix something for you, just in case this is preached differently and you've heard it different. Just because God hears you doesn't mean anything changed. You may still be going through the same thing. I know that's true because the next thing that happens is he sets our feet upon a rock. In other words, he gives us a stable place to go through our situation. At no point does it say you've taken out of the situation. It just says, I know you've been shaky, you've been wondering, you've been questioning, you're losing your faith, you're getting tired, you might faint, you're sick of it, about to lose your mind. You're getting sicker because of the stress. But no, God sees you, hears you, and puts your feet upon a rock. So he takes that miry, unstable situation and he makes it firm so that you can stand and not slip. So you can stand in your faith. So you can deal with the challenges that are coming at you because people are still watching. And wow, that's difficult because our star might be somebody else's salvation. Now, I don't know if you like me, but when I'm really going through and I'm in the waiting room, I don't care about your salvation. I care about my star. I'm just trying to keep it real. If you go to hell, so be it. But I need to get out of here.
Okay.
But it's in our hellish spots that God just might use that situation to set somebody else in the right hand. It's rough.
Yes,
But when we go through things, it's for God's glory, not ours.
Yes.
That's rough. I have to ask God about that when I meet him one day, not soon, I hope. So then, the next thing that happens, he gave him a firm place to stand. Now at this point, I don't know in the waiting room if your situation is over, the place that you stand in is a place of peace, or God gave you a situation that elevates you just a little over the crap that you've been going through, and so that it looks different. You see, sometimes we just need to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. But when you're in the waiting room, remember I told you the lights are dim. And when lights are dim, you see all kind of shadows. And shadows are big. They look like giants. So perhaps God turns on enough light so the shadows diminish and we see the giant for what it really is, a midget. Something we can live through. Something that we can overcome. Something that we can handle. I know some of y'all might be thinking, but my child didn't make it out of this situation. That's horrible. But even still, it can be endured. I know it can be endured because Jesus on the cross cried out, Abba, Father, why have you forsaken me? Where are you, God? And that had to be the worst of cries, to have God turn his back. But in our worst situation, God is trying to show us in this text is that I will sit right here with you through your worst situation. Because the sun will come out tomorrow. That doesn't really help, but it's true. That's all we got. Being a Christian doesn't mean everything is going to be roses. Y'all know that song, I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden? People tend to think because you believe in the Lord, you get a rose garden. I think not. It just simply means that God is with you when you're dealing with the thorns. And every now and then you get to see the roses and hopefully they're prettier than what they would be if you didn't know the Lord. So then we got to He gave me a new song. So let me tell you something about the waiting room that I have come to appreciate. I had to give this a lot of thought. Because what do I appreciate about the waiting room? Well, I can tell y'all one thing. You develop patience. Patience is something I have never prayed for, because if you ask for patience, you got to go through something that develops patience. So I want you to know, well, I've been in the waiting room. I did not ask for patience, but I guess that was on the curriculum for these last 11 years of my life. Patience. You learn patience. You learn to trust God.
Mm-hmm.
You develop a different relationship with God.
Amen.
From the beginning, your predicament,
Mm-hmm.
to the waiting and the waiting and the waiting some more. So you wait some more, and it's a struggle. You wait some more, and it's frustrating. You wait some more, but wait a minute. Some point in the wait, if Jesus meets you, and God does do that, and he puts your feet upon the rock, and so you can see that there is a way out of no way. At some point in there, your faith doesn't go away. It gets bigger.
Right.
So what God does every time we find ourselves in a waiting room, God develops a stronger resume.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This job, that job. Before you know it, the next time we hit a storm, we can pull out the resume and we can say, God's got this. And so we won't say, I waited, and I waited some more. It'll just be like, I waited and I waited because I knew God was going to show up. Yeah, it was rough, but this time I know how to wait.
Yes.
Every time we're in the waiting room, we get closer to God. So let me tell you something. T.D. Jakes, years and years and years and years ago, when he used to preach in West Virginia, I became a big fan, like a rock star fan. Nobody knew who he was at that time, because I don't know if y'all know this, but people said he was too ugly to preach in their churches. Yeah, nobody wanted to hear Bishop Jakes, who wasn't a bishop, he was just a reverend who technically was a minister of music, preach in West Virginia. So I was at a particular service, I think I was 19, and the former mayor of D.C., Marion Barry, was there, and the late mayor. And we were all there, and T.D. Jakes said, we need a need, because it's the only thing that keeps us on our knees. If you weren't in the waiting room, about to go in the waiting room right now, hoping to come out with a new song, would you get on your knees? What kind of time would you spend with God? If it was sunny all the time, would you be crying out to God, or would your prayers be pretty? Lord, I want to thank you for everything I did today. Or would you be crying out to the Lord, God, where are you? I need you. We don't need God when stuff is bad. But people are watching, right?
Yeah.
Right.
People are watching. And I thought about what that might look like. So when you're in the wait some more, I thought about what that looks like when people are watching and God is getting ready to show up. And this is what I came up with before that new song comes. I am an African American. I don't know if y'all noticed, but I'm black. And we're on the Eastern Shore, and we were in the state of Maryland, where they had quite a few slaves. My family be from Virginia and North Carolina, and they were slaves indeed. And I think about my ancestors who waited and waited, your ancestors, and waited some more. And if y'all give it some real thought, tears might form alive in your eyes. We're talking about women and men that saw their children sold and would never see them again. It's easy for you to run into a relative and not even know that y'all be the same people. Because we were stripped away from each other. When we watch the Latinos on the border and we see those children stripped away, I feel for them. But they ain't new. We come from a people who have seen their babies thrown in the air and used for targets. We come from a people whose mother had to take their daughter to the master at 12 or 13 because she was a rock picking age for him, and tell your baby it's going to be okay when you know it ain't going to be okay.
All right.
We come from a people that work from can't see in the morning to can't see at night.
All right,
we come from a people who first came here on a ship, laying on their side with sowers, laying in their own bow and survived.
Preach, bow.
Don't believe they weren't praying in it. Okay, I know Christians believe, certain things. The Muslims were coming across. The Muslims were crying out to God too. same God, crying and help us, Lord. And they waited. I don't know how people prayed for 400 years and believed for 400 years that they may never see tomorrow as a free man or a free woman. By the way, they get free, now you're paying them. So, I mean, it's still ain't free, right? We're still working on that right now. We put our hands up, we still ain't free. But nonetheless, we come from a people who has specialization, PhDs, postdoctors in waiting. And so when I stand here before you and y'all sit here in the Eastern Shore in this church, sometimes y'all have to realize that this is something special. You freely came in here. You were allowed to worship God. Yes. You can play drums in the church. You know we couldn't play a drum because it meant that we were drumming for freedom. So the white people stopped us from being able to have a drum. Our hair is out. It's not covered in a scarf like Aunt Jemima because it was against the law for black women to show their hair because it was offensive to white people. We come from a people who specialize in waiting.
Yes.
A lot of them met God over here. And they got introduced to God when the Israelites were freed by Moses. They were like, oh, the same God that did that for them can do that for us. Yes. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited some more. And they waited believing.
Oh, sorry.
So when I thought about that, people watching, I'm watching the stories of our ancestors. We watch and remember the stories of our ancestors. And then when it got to a new song, a new praise in God, and I thought about what that sounded like. It sounds like songs like We Shall Overcome. It sounds songs like Lift Every Voice and Sing, God of Our Weary Years. Oh, this is in the waiting room, God of Our Silent Tears. But then they got free. Civil rights movement came. Yeah, we still fighting, y'all, but we did see a Barack Obama.
Yes.
And I don't know about y'all. I worked the campaign, and the day that he won, I saw older people, 90 years plus, get on their knees on the floor in tears and say, God, I didn't think it would happen, but we waited. Yes. I saw Prince George's County councilman, the chief executive of Prince George's County at that time, Jack Johnson, get on his knees in front of a crowd of a mixed audience and say, God, we waited, but we didn't believe it would happen. So the song changes. Now I'm not at the end of my waiting room visit yet. My baby has not been born. My person has not come out of surgery. I have not been told everything's good, you can come home. But I think I am at the point where my feet have been set on a rock. Now it's up to you to identify where you might be in your storm, where you want to be the next time you have the storm, and how you're going to be. But I know that while I'm waiting, my song is changing because I know something to be real. And I came by here there today to tell you this. God is indeed real. And while we are in the waiting room with the dim lights and the tears in our eyes and the wonderment and the confusion and the pain, physical, emotional, spiritual, while we are there and folk laugh and folk watch, God is sitting next to you in your pew, standing next to me in this pulpit, and he's saying, hold on, baby girl. Hold on, my brother. Hold on, my sister. Hold on, quiet. Hold on.
Yes.
Because when this is all said and done, you're going to have a new song to take you to the next waiting room of your life. All I can tell you is, trust God. Trust God. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. As they wait upon the Lord, they shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like an eagle. They shall run. Run on and see what the end is going to be. And not be weary. I know I've been running a long time. I might have to slow down a little bit. I might have to back up a little bit and start again. And they shall walk and not faint. God is real. Hold on until you get to your new song.
Amen. Amen.